Hey guys, so let's talk about Sandy origin story. As some of you might know, my failed little storyboard series was supposed to be a sequel to a book series called Sanity. It was planned to be about 5 novels, all describing the soap opera hijinks of a new planet that was connected to Earth from a mysterious portal. It was weird. It still is weird. It was the first story that got me into writing seriously, and I'm still attached to these characters. I got through writing 2.5 of the original books before scrapping it. It was well over 2,000 pages and had 300 characters to keep track of. Yes, you heard me right. 300. Obviously, this series had a lot of issues. However, I still like some of the concepts and characters. There's still a lot to work with, and I think if I rework it a little more, it could be salvaged into a much more palpable and enjoyable series. So far, I have managed to cut the cast of 300 down to around 46 characters. Still a lot, but hey, it's a soap opera, there's going to be a lot of characters. Some have been combined, and some characters have been cut altogether. I wanted my next step to be redesigning the characters, because a lot of them needed to be updated. This is what this series is going to be. This is going to be a 5-part series of the new redesign, split up by the species I'll be covering. Now, these designs aren't necessarily final. Some of them I still don't like. You can tell in some of the characters' art, I don't pay that much attention to anatomy or details. Mostly, this is just to get my ideas down. If you're still interested in seeing what's been changed, let's get started! This episode, we're covering oracles. Oracles live in the northern hemisphere of their planet Zychondria. The planet name is subject to change. Their country/territory is mostly mild hills and meadows. The meadows have a lot of tall grass, so oracles have evolved to stand on their hind legs, though they can still walk on all fours. Oracles have extremely long, crooked snouts, large forearms for climbing, and a claw at the end of their tails for defense, kinda like a scorpion. Fun fact, if you inspect the tail of a lion, they also have a tiny claw on the tip of their tails. Little Lauren was onto something. Oracles also have these claws on the end of their antennae. I think I've done a poor job explaining this, but these things right here are not ears. Oracles have holes in the back of their head that act like ears, kinda like a frog or a bird, but these are not ears. I can't even really call them antenna or antlers because they don't really act like those. It's kind of more just like a built-up, bulky, just a bunch of cartilage. Think of it like if you glued 2 pipe cleaners on the top of your head. Does that make sense? I guess. Well, anyways, oracles also have bright, flashy color patterns. Unfortunately, this makes hunting and other parts of survival a little more, difficult. So instead of evolving duller colors, oracles have evolved superpowers. These superpowers follow X-Men rules, where they're randomly generated and a parent's power doesn't determine what their child will have. The one big difference is every other generation will have one oracle that possesses the power of psychic, hence why they're called oracles. This oracle takes the role of emperor/empress and names all of the oracles based on the prophecy they receive about them. Well, that was how it originally worked, where they were the emperor, but Sanity showed up. And I really can't explain more than that. That's all you really need to know about oracles. I will be showing the redesigns for all of the oracles, since none of them are spoilers in itself. I'll say a little about each of them, like what their job is, who they're related to, and what their perceived power is. I say perceived because, fun fact, and I think honestly a lot of superhero shows should do this because I think it's funny, is some of the characters lie about what power they actually have. Okay, so let's get started with the head honcho, the Holy Grail, the Green Goblin herself. So I've drawn Sanity a lot throughout the years. She was the first oracle I ever made. Heck, her name is the title of the series. Big whoop. Her design has remained pretty consistent throughout the years. Here I just dulled the green slightly down. I also got rid of some of the scarring on top of her head for readability. Her right eye is still held in with wires, though she can pull those off and just let the eyeball fall out like a gross party trick. She thinks it's funny. No one else does. In human years, she's around 14 years old and has the power of manipulating electricity. Most of the time, you can see tiny sparks come off her from time to time. She's very brash, cocky, and is an intense adrenaline junkie. Most people think she was given her name ironically, and yeah, you can't blame them. So, that's Sanity. Up next is Venom, Sanity's estranged father. This was supposed to be a spoiler in the books, but at this point it's pretty obvious. I don't have the original first picture I drew of him, but originally his whole thing was like, you think Sanity's unhinged? Let me just one-up her real quick. This is definitely a contrast to the more cunning, smooth-talking Venom we have now. His design hasn't changed that much either. He doesn't really have striking colors, but his design is more focused on anatomy choices than his fur pattern. For example, if you'll notice, his posture is much straighter than all the other Urkels, and his tail is a little longer. His power is, well, venom. Get bit with one of those fangs and you'll experience some pretty disturbing hallucinations. Before getting the boot from Zychondria, Venom was a mechanic. Now his role is an ambassador to V-Nex, a place I'll talk more about in a later episode. Okay, now for Reverence, Sanity's mom. Reverence's name was originally Stargaze, which... she also had this weird hair that none of the Oracles have now, for obvious reasons, because it looked bad. For her redesign, I made her look a lot more like Sanity. I used to have a reason why Sanity didn't look like either of her parents, but it was stupid and really convoluted, so now she's just a nice green and yellow, then a crimson and yellow. She's a receptionist for the Capitol, but her job entails more managerial duties than just a regular secretary. Her power is creating auras in the sky. It's not particularly useful power, unless you want to send out a message at night, then it can be pretty useful. The next character is Pride, Sanity's grandfather and legal guardian at the start of the book series. Pride is based on my grandfather. Fun fact, he actually voiced Pride in the SOS episode. He is not a super important character, but sorry for pulling the mood down in this episode, but so my grandfather passed away recently, and he really was like another dad to me. It was pretty hard, and I just really don't have the heart to pull this character out. So I'm just gonna keep him. Pride is one of the oldest characters in the whole series. He used to be a fisherman before the large rivers of Zychondria dried out, if that gives you an idea of how old Oracles can get. Now, he's retired and he likes to find little streams to fish in. He's missing an eye from one of his past misadventures and has a temporary eye patch Venom made that was actually supposed to be a eye prosthetic that he was going to build off of it, but Venom got kicked out of Zychondria, so that's not happening anymore. So now he just has a crappy little eye patch. His power is turning the hairs on his back into spikes. He usually just uses them for fish hooks now. And that's Pride. Okay, next character, Spectacle. Spectacle is the current Psychic Oracle and is the one supposedly in power. If you notice in the art that the pose is weird, it's because I forgot when I was drawing that she only has 3 legs and had to erase one of her legs because I already finished the drawing. So yeah, she starts the novel out with 3 legs. Her design hasn't changed that much, except for the spot around her left eye has kind of branched out into a more crackling pattern. She's very level-headed and methodical. Not really much else to say about her. This is Honor, originally named Theft. For some reason, he was seen in Sanity Origin Stories, but he had no speaking lines. Honor is Spectacle's husband. Oracles actually use the word partner to refer to significant others, but I'll just use husband for now because it's easier. It's fashionable for male Oracles to have an extremely crooked snout in their culture, so Honor has had his snout medically altered to be super bent. He finds perceptions very important, so he comes off as stiff and a little snooty. He's a little snooty boy. His power is being a living lie detector, which is important because he's the Empire's highest judge in a court of law. Now let's talk about his sister Sawbones. These two characters weren't originally siblings, but because some of the characters that I cut out were part of the family tree, I had to mess with it a bit. Sawbones' original name was Titanium. I like her new name so much better. I tried to make Honor and Sawbones' designs similar enough to where you could tell they were related, but also distinct from each other. I honestly don't know why I don't talk about her a lot, because I think she's really cool, and she's really important to the plot. Sawbones is the head doctor of the Empire, and her power is healing. This healing power does have some limitations, but this video would be like 3 hours long if I had to list out all of the limitations that it does, so I'll just say it can't do everything. Still, it's very sought out after, and if you think fights break out between characters and countries trying to get her for whatever reason, you would be correct. Your army is gonna be pretty strong if you can just heal everyone when they get injured. Spectacle and Honor's daughter is Divine. Divine is one of Sanity's friends and confidants. I haven't changed her design much besides giving her a lacy pattern on her back and legs. She's a bit timid and can kind of come off as a doormat, but she's really good with her power, which is ice. And no, she can't make snowmen come to life like Elsa, unfortunately, but I still think she's pretty cool. Divine's cousin is Allegiance, Sawbone's son. His original name was Rogue, so his name got a total 180. His design hasn't changed much besides giving him more of a white striping. I really like having the mismatched claws he had originally. He also used to have a twin brother named Hazard, but I just combined the two, and with the combination I think he comes off a little dumber than he was originally. This stems from him not really having a lot of tact when it comes to political matters, which is unfortunate because everyone around him has political ties, so he can come off kind of a little stupid compared to everybody else, but I actually don't think he's not really that stupid. He has no street smarts. He has airbending powers and is also friends with Sanity. Sanity's last friend is Languish. His original name used to be Eternity, and his voice actor also is actually one of the extra voices in Silent Transmission, so hello. He had really emo hair. Fun fact, in the very early stages of me coming up with Sanity, Languish kind of worked like a Pluto Goofy dynamic. So like Sanity was like Goofy, where she had like sentience and was like more human, and then like Languish acted more animalistic, kind of like Pluto. You know, Pluto acted more like a dog, but yet like Goofy was also a dog for some reason. Anyways, it was weird. So he acts more like everyone else does now, and I brightened up the tip of his tail so he wasn't just a completely dark void. And I have given him his pupils back, because the plot point where his pupils were missing doesn't really make sense anymore. He's perceived to be the smartest one out of Sanity's little posse, but isn't the first to act unless asked to. His ability is putting others to sleep, but at the expense of the victim experiencing terrifying nightmares, so he doesn't really use it that often. Languish's mom is Solace, formerly named Forgiven. I put a lot more saturated colors into her design while still keeping the tear stain pattern on her face. Solace is very protective over Languish, and can be a little paranoid about mundane things. Her ability is having photographic memory, which she utilizes by memorizing thousands of recipes, and she's the capital's head chef. Languish's father is Sterling. Y'all remember Sterling, right? The guy who got body checked in the first episode? Yeah, well, he still gets godded before the series starts, so I won't go into too much detail. His power is kind of like a silver Midas thing, where he can turn inanimate objects into silver. He's still arrogant, prideful, and quite gullible. Really, his only redeeming quality was being a good dad to Languish before getting slapped out of existence. His death happens a little bit differently now, but I won't spoil it here. His job was being a security officer. This is Burden. I can't say too much about her. She used to have wings and 3 claws on the end of each ear, which was dumb. Still, I made the design on the sides of her back to still mimic wings. I thought that might be cool. She's pretty old, though not as old as Pride, and can manipulate dreams. That's really all I can say about her. This is Boldheart. He's not featured in Sanity origin stories, but he's pretty important. He has the equivalence of dwarfism in oracles, and doesn't seem to possess any powers. However, this doesn't seem to stop him. He's become the assistant to the Empress in recent years, and is pretty good at it. He tends to be the voice of reason. Whether anyone listens to him, however, is another thing. Revolt used to be Rebel. She was one of Sanity's important friends back in the original draft. Her role has been demoted to a character that doesn't physically appear in the books. Her design hasn't changed much, except she does now get to keep her claw at the end of her tail, so good for her. Her power is fire manipulation. She's loud, confrontational, and likes to snoop her nose into stuff she really shouldn't. The last character I'll talk about is Renaissance. Renaissance was the psychic oracle before Spectacle, and doubled as her mentor. He doesn't have much of a role besides just being, like, a figure in the books. I mean, I can't really explain it more than that. He's just kind of a thing that people reference to. Anyways, I wanted his design to have some geometric flair, which came about in his antenna and cheek fluff. He's never really had a design before, so I'll probably go back and change him over time. Okay, so those are all the Oracles. As you can see, still a lot of characters, and there's still more to come. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you stick around when I post the next iteration. Adios, amigos!